I'm excited about the opportunities that are involved with the different events, not only the ability to network with other cartoonists, when you're at shows or different things you're trying to sell and you're trying to market, as opposed to just chatting with your friends and other artists. The National Cartoonist Society will allow me to monthly check in with local other comic artists, as well as have other events like this librarian conference and C2E2 and other events that I could get my foot in the door without jumping in and tabling and footing a whole, $500,000 bill just to hope to get the money back or to at least cover my table costs, let alone make a profit. But at least with the National Cartoonist Society, I can not only represent that I'm a part of this, here's what I've done with it, but also, hey, look at these other people and the cool stuff they're doing as well. Hi, I'm Bret Juliano, creator of the Dust Bunny Mafia and Detective Potatoes. You can find me at comics.dustbunnymafia.com, and I'm on all the social media at Dust Bunny Mafia. You're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We're joined today by a possibly, and I'll have to look back at the records, 5-time returning guest. He is part of the Five Timers Club. If he isn't, it'll be his next interview. But he is the creator of Dust Bunny Mafia, Detective Potatoes, a true crime mafia aficionado in many respects. And we're back just having a wonderful conversation, talking about Kickstarters, upcoming campaigns, a secret that he is finally going to talk about as well for a society he's just recently joined by the ever-talented Bret Juliano. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
It's a blast having you back on because last time we were talking to each other, you basically listed everything about the Mafia I never really understood or knew about because of your love of history, and I think that's amazing here. I've had you on for Dust Bunny Mafia. I've had you on for Detective Potatoes. What's new since we last chatted? Because it's been a while.
Yeah. So last year, I ran a campaign for the sixth installment of the Based on a True Story series, which we've talked about before. And that was kind of the end goal for that initial run of mini comics, because with that, I now have enough material to start building a trade paperback collection. So I'll have over 200, shooting between 200 to 250 comics that will all be accompanied by little bits of history in which I retell mafia stories in a fun and engaging light, in the same way that Looney Tunes discussed opera and arts and culture. So yeah, my goal is to educate people to the true crime stories that are out there that often don't get a lot of light. And so yeah, that successfully crowdfunded in March or April of 2025, which actually led me into creating a short campaign for a digest in which I prepared you a little bit for, called Mafia Unmasked. And that ended up being so it's a noir style black and white comic in which I took the greatest of my Based on a True Story series and did them in kind of a chronological order of the high points of the American mafia history. And yeah.
That's amazing because there's a lot of written novels about it. There's TV series that I'm sure are being made. You're breaking it down to a simpler approach because in 100 pages or so, you're getting, like you said, the highlights of the mafia culture, which I think is either overblown by entertainment perspectives and not really based in reality, or it's just hints of truth.
Yeah, I've started to realize that there's not a lot of people kind of doing what I'm doing. It's either, like you said, in Hollywood, and it's highly glamorized, and they're taking, just little bits of true crime, like with Scorsese's The Irishman. It was based on a real story, but when you talk to the researchers and the people who are familiar with that time and the kind of the authorities in the true crime era, there's a lot of uh, leeway that they took and a lot of creative liberties in The Irishman. And so there's, you know, the backbone and the major points are true, but then they took a lot of creative freedom in things like that. And a lot of the movies are that way if they're not just fictionalized entirely.
With 5% more truth, possibly. Looking back at how you've approached creating, like taking these stories and putting them to your comic style here, what is it about taking an idea from like the sketchbook stage to finally get it into full production that keeps you excited in this particular genre?
There's a lot of stories out there, and there's so much history. I mean, people know the big names. They know Capone, they know Gotti, they know Luciano and Vegas and things like that. Um, but I was talking with a friend the other earlier this week about like how when back in the early 1900s there were 26 mafia families spread throughout the United States. From you had the big ones that people thought of with New York, Chicago, LA, and then you get like Kansas City, you get Vegas, and those are all still bigger places you might expect that. But then you've got Tampa in Florida, you've got New Orleans, you had Pueblo, Colorado, which is south of Colorado Springs. You have Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington had a crime family at one time. And so it's just this massive, uh, you know, there are all these, you know, little interesting trivia that a lot of people don't know about. And there's still so much to be explored.
That goes into Dust Bunny Mafia, though. You've been working on this series for a while now. What keeps it fresh?
Having all the extra stories, having the true crime element. I shared a picture online um, earlier this week that I talked about. It was a picture of my true crime bookshelf that I've got in my basement. And it's this little three shelf, IKEA kind of thing. And but the only part of it that I showed was all the horizontal books stacked up on one side of the shelf, and then on the floor that is about 2 feet tall. That's all of my to be read pile for my true crime library. Um, but it was, so I've got 40, 50 books, and I've stopped buying them. And those are just ones that I got, 10 books for Christmas that were from gifted to me about that were fit in that true crime. I'm like, great, you just added, another 2,000 pages of material that I want to get through, but to get more stories and so that keeps the comics fresh, at least right now.
Is the to be read pile just finally like taking over your IKEA shelf where you're like organizing it and the rest get donated, or how does that work?
It's just I need to buy a bigger bookshelf is the key, because I have no intention of I've already pared down the true crime bookshelf. About a year ago, I donated some books to one of our local libraries who was doing a book sale and stuff. Um, but all the ones that I have, I want to read, and the ones I have on my shelf, I don't feel like parting with, at least not yet. So, but I will inventory it from time to time. And so now it's just a matter of, when I finish the next book I'm reading, I'll just kind of go through the list and kind of pick my fancy. But there's not really any order to it as of right now.
Because you're taking these famous mafia figures in real life and you're putting them into your world here, as this world expands, have any of these characters surprised you? Like, have they evolved in ways you didn't plan when you first introduced them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of characters actually more recently. I'm starting to work on a new character that came out of. Um, he's not officially like in my Mobimals realm. He is a mobster animal, but he doesn't qualify he doesn't have a nickname that corresponds with the real life one. But it was a bootlegger that was in Chicago that moved to Cincinnati and the Newport, Kentucky area, which is just across the river during Prohibition. And he was a Chicago lawyer who turned into a bootlegger, and his name is George Remus, and he was a very eccentric personality. He's one of the inspirations for Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby. So like the idea of like the lavish parties that Gatsby threw and things like that, that's kind of this George Remus character. But he was a lawyer. He took the ideas of whiskey and stuff and alcohol being illegal only if you sold it or if it wasn't labeled as medicinal. So he bought all of this, all these warehouses and things that were going, all these bootleggers were trying to get rid of their merchandise because they didn't want the federal agents to seize them and jail them. And he's like, I'm just going to buy them. And then he would label the different barrels medicinal. And according to medicinal laws, you could own alcohol and you could sell them at pharmacies, but it was a loophole that he found and exploited. And so he became, it's a, so I have a Fox character based on Giant Fox Torio that I've used in a lot of comics and in banners and stuff throughout probably the past 5 or 6 years. And I really wanted to differentiate this Remus character because they both came from Chicago, but I turned Remus into a raccoon, even though the fox was my original plan to go with the character, but I didn't want two Chicago bootleggers with the same like animal mobster personas, and I didn't want the things to get confusing with my longtime audience who knew this one character, and if I had another fox pop up with a similar kind of origin, I didn't want things to be confusing, and so I was like, kind of an evolution of, oh, I need to future proof this because if I'm going to start using this character, I want to make sure, that there's clarity between them. But I wasn't expecting when I was diving into the stories to, you know, to have that conflict originally.
And it's not like you can change the color of the fox color, just to make it subtly different than, your original character there.
Yeah.
I don't think we really dived into your creative process because it has been a while. We usually talk about the characters and the story and everything like that. What's your creative routine look like when it comes to, say, setting up a story for either Mobimals or for Dust Bunny Mafia or Detective Potatoes?
So Detective Potatoes is quite a bit different than the other two because it's co-written with a friend of mine, Dan Bernstrom. And so that was actually the origin was a side project. So Dan and I were college roommates, and ever since I came up, and we've stayed close, and ever since I came up with the idea of Dust Bunny Mafia, as a writer, he was like, "That's it. This is going to be one of your things. I could see you doing these comics and these characters forever." And he was so excited for me with it, but he also was like, I would love to play in that sandbox at some point. And so after, I don't know how many years, but eventually we came up with the idea of, okay, what if we do some like noir stories, all ages mystery with Detective Potatoes and just kind of spin off his world a little bit. And so that's where the idea with the Detective Potatoes novels to come in. And it was really a side project and just hey, what if we try this? And you know how to crowdfund. Dan was saying he knows how to write novels. And so we thought, pair it into this kind of hybrid prose and picture story. And that's really just kind of how it was. And we did a lot of brainstorming about what about this? How about, bootlegging coffee or bootlegging, it was originally bootlegging alcohol, and then we wanted it to be more uh, all ages friendly. So then we did coffee instead. And so, but on those original calls, I would spit out these mobster facts like we would do on these chats, and he'd be like, "Oh, let's take this and put it in here and rework it like this." And so there's threads of truth layered into those Detective Potato stories, and they just kind of set up. Each story kind of ends on a slight cliffhanger, and at least there's enough of a twist at the end to lead into a natural next story. And so that's how Detective Potatoes works, which is completely different than all of my other um, stories and plot lines with Dust Bunny Mafia, with the Mobimals and things like that.
But when you're creating a story, when you're taking like a real life story and you're converting it to your comic, what's that process like?
Yeah. So when I'm taking a real life story, usually, I mean, it just comes from being inspired when I'm reading or when I'm watching a documentary or hearing a, snippet on a podcast or something like that. And at that point, I'll, pause it, take a picture, write it down, do something to capture the actual transcription of the audio or the text. Um, and then I will usually, there'll be one line that's really interesting or something that'll just hook me. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I need to translate into a 3 panel comic, or this would be a great, 10-page story. Um, and it's just that like inspiration of just loving the material um, that kind of gives me the sparks. And so when I've got a snippet that I want to work on, I capture it. I will generally start kind of dial dialoguing, sketching out, or storyboarding. If it's a 3 panel, what's the scene that I'm going to paint with it? Is it going to be an exact duplicate of the scene, or am I going to be riffing on it with like my dust bunnies in a bar talking about it, and it references, their dialogue or what their actions are doing is referencing what happened, and they're like reminiscing about it, or is it going to be I'm going to take the exact uh, setting and kind of copy it word for word, or kind of set up the whole scene. So that's kind of the two variations on what my characters do with it. Um, and then once I got, have at least a grounding of what I want to do with it, then I'll start, you know, opening up Illustrator and grabbing, you know, either start down the process of, you know, taking other characters, other frames, reusing artwork, um, or and we'll go into the path of like what I'm doing now with the Remus character of, oh, now I need a character for this because I have 8 strips that are going to feature this character. And so now I need to build the character first. And okay, what's a raccoon going to look like? Now I need to illustrate it. What are the colors? What's the fashion that I want to integrate into it? And so then that's a whole nother rabbit hole that I have to go down before I can even start, even though I've got, the text and the accompanying text written out, but then I need to build the whole character before I can insert them into the different things.
Kind of reminds me of how the South Park guys put together their stuff. You know, it's just like so many different characters that they've had to put together over the years. It's the same for yourself as well. At least you give them better fashion.
Well, I would certainly hope so.
The one thing that's different in your lower third, for those that are watching this, is that National Cartoon Society. Talk us through how that came about, how you applied, what that conversation was like, because that's a huge congratulations, and I'm glad to see you're part of that amazing society.
Thank you. Um, it's been a dream of mine to be a cartoonist. And there was a lot of time that I was making my comics that I didn't feel I had the imposter syndrome of I was just making a web comic. I was just, putting out this little book that was print on demand for Meet the Family and things like that without actually, being a real cartoonist because I wasn't making a living doing it. But ever since coming to Chicago, going to events like C2E2 and which is Chicago's Comic Con, and things like that, I would meet other comic creators and then find out they were a part of this cartoonist society. And the National Cartoonist Society is both for hobbyists and working professionals, and editorial cartoonists. There's a lot of different facets in that are that cover the different members and their member types, and they're very welcoming in terms of, you know, I don't do the same style you do, but I still respect what you do. Um, and so it was really a kind of a nudging from some of my comic friends that who I'd gotten to know from doing different shows and tabling next to at different events when they're like, yeah, you have 13 years of comic experience and you've put out, how many Kickstarters and how many books and, 1,000 individual strips and everything. You should apply. And so it was that nudging of other people in the society. And so last year, in the application, you need to get reference letters from people that are on the society, current members, or just kind of things like that. And then you fill out this whole application. And I submitted it probably in August or September, and I didn't hear until November. Um, and it's a kind of a rolling basis. You can apply at any time, but you have to get a full vote of approval from every member on the board, and so it's either 100% or nothing. Um, and so I found out at the end of November, and yeah, that was very exciting, rewarding, and I'm already planning some events with the National Cartoonist Society. Because, like I had said before, they've got tables at different conventions, and so if all things go as planned, by the time this airs, I'll have probably tabled with the NCS at a Chicago convention or two. So
That's awesome. How has being part of this community influenced your future ambitions?
I think there's a lot of, well, one of the things that they're doing this year is there's a national conference for librarians and educators, and it moves around every year, and it's held in the summer after schools get out. And this year it's in Chicago, and they're going to have a booth table there for, I think it's a 5-day event. And so I'm, you know, excited about the opportunities that are involved with the different events. Not only the ability to network with other cartoonists, because when you're at shows or different things, you're trying to sell and you're trying to market, as opposed to just chatting with your friends and other artists. And being at the National Cartoonist Society will allow me to kind of monthly check in with local other comic artists and things like that, as well as have other events like this librarian conference and C2E2 and other events that I could get my foot in the door as without jumping in and tabling and footing a whole $500,000 bill just to hope to get the money back, or to at least cover my table costs, let alone make a profit. But at least with the National Cartoonist Society, I can not only represent that I'm a part of this, here's what I've done with it, but also, hey, look at these other people and the cool stuff they're doing as well.
I'm glad that you got that push from your fellow comic creators to take that step. And I know the imposter syndrome is very hectic when it comes to being a creative person. I deal with it sometimes as well too. So it's always the fear of doing something new and different and the fear of rejection that is also things that stop us from moving forward. So I'm glad you're past that now.
Thank you.
Past interview we've had is about the Mobimals playing cards. That campaign did well. I know our conversation was great, and I loved just asking you the various questions we had there. Those that haven't seen it should watch back at that past interview. Are you thinking about making a second set of that? What's going on with that?
Yes. So there is a second series planned. I've got, I want to say about half of the cards, characters illustrated, which for those that don't know, it's a whole deck of playing cards featuring these Mobimals, mobster animals based on real life mobsters. And then each card corresponds to a different mobster, and then it tells their name, their nickname, where they're from, um, when they lived and died, that kind of a thing. And so for each deck, I've got 52 cards that are all original characters. And so with this one, I've got all of the planning done, and like I've got a big Excel spreadsheet for what cards are going to have what characters on them. Um, but yeah, I think I've only got about half of the characters illustrated. I have um, 5 or 6 that don't have a animal attached to them yet because they've got a more ambiguous, like the beast or the animal. So there's a few that are still lingering for they need a character or a animal to correspond with. But if all things go well, that'll be a fall Kickstarter. Uh,
I think it's interesting because you don't always equate like playing cards to these colorful characters that you have created. I'm glad that first campaign went well. What are you going to be doing a little differently this time around? Is it the same printer? Like, did you learn anything from that first time around, especially with playing cards being a completely different medium?
I've done playing cards twice. Once for the Mobimals, but then once in 2021, I actually did a deck of Dust Bunny Mafia playing cards. And so, um, but I like the printer. I wouldn't change anything about that campaign. The only thing I might do is I had one Joker card. Um, so with the deck, it came with 55 cards in the deck. And so you have the 52. And then normally I had 3 Joker cards, but I had 2 of them be guest artists doing um, their interpretation on my characters that weren't featured in the original deck. And then I had one that was a commission card. And so this time around, I would actually probably open it up and do less guest art and do 3 commission cards and have more, basically open the opportunity for more fans to kind of get that level of getting their character, their custom modelable character on a card. And then with that, it also, since it's a higher tier and it costs more money, they get like 6 decks of playing cards or something like that so that they can, you know, have some to keep, have some that are unopened if they want to have the collector kind of item, um, things like that. And then I'll also include like a sleeve so that they can like put it in a nice little, they can open one up, put it in the sleeve, and have it like displayed if they want to for their custom character. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think the campaign went really well. I was really happy with it. Um, the other thing I might do is actually try and get another plushie created for one of the Mobimals characters. Previously, um, I've had I had Bugsy Siegel uh, turned into a little plushie, and then I had um, the chin for Vincent Chin Gigante turned into a chinchilla in a bathrobe. But these ones were handmade and in small batches. And then with the last Detective Potatoes campaign, I actually bit the bullet and went to China to manufacture a real plushie in a larger quantity. And you can just tell by looking uh, between the two of them, the details and the quality control and different things are a lot different when you're manufacturing at a larger scale than the handmade. And so I would like to do, if I can, I don't know if it'd be a stretch goal or if I would, just add it into the campaign, but for the Mobimals, get one of my kind of signature characters, Lucky Luciano as a cat, Mad Dog Cole as a Chihuahua, or something like that, and have one of those characters also be in a real plushie form.
Yeah, that'd be good. Eventually, you're going to have a Pokemon style plushie collection, right? Like collect all however many you've created.
Yeah, there's actually a big entrepreneur that I follow called Gary V, who's talking about building the next Pokemon with his V friends, and he's doing comics and cards and things like that. And I'm like, I need to get on his show to ask him a question to be like, all right, I've been doing this. How do I, level up the next But yeah, I mean, I would love to do, have whole plushies, have, the trading cards and everything kind of fall under my umbrella of the next Pokemon or Marvel series or that kind of a world.
DJ Kaufman's the artist for the V Friends, so he's a very talented original webcomic creator turned into an illustrator, and now working with Gary V. Talking with him, like just tossing him a quick message, he's easily approachable as well. And Gary V, like I think he does the occasional AMAs or anything like that. Like he's
Yep.
very active on social media. Toss a question, like add him on something, even if you took a picture of your plushies and at Gary V, hey, I'm already doing this. What's your recommendation?
Yeah.
You might become viral and just on that alone.
Yeah. No, that's a great thought because I mean that's what I was laying out. I was working on laying out my next book the night last night, and I had a Gary V podcast that I was listening to while I'm laying out this, and one of his Q&As and stuff. And so, and yeah, as you said, he's very active on there, and I was like, all right, I need to get on one of his little things because I know he's accessible. It's not like he's one of the people that are, I'm in my high tower and I don't talk to anyone. So
He's definitely distilled some really interesting wisdom about promotion and social media and short content that I've followed as well. And it's just like to put it into a level, he can tell you about it, but you're the one that actually has to go out and do it. So that's where 90% of the people stop. You got to take that first step.
yeah, there was a bit I was listening to where he was talking about whatnot and live selling. Someone asked him a question and said, I've done a couple shows, da da da, and he's like, you need to come back to me. It's not getting the traction that he wants, and he's like, I've done it for like 8 hours, and he's like, yeah, come back to me when you've done it for 100 hours or 300 hours, and then tell me that it's not working, and then I'll work with you. But until you actually invest the time into it. You can't just say, oh, I went to the gym once. I don't see any results. I guess I'm not going to go again.
Oh, I made my first batch of coffee and it was horrible. I'm never going to drink coffee again.
Yeah.
Idea if that happens. But you've also have other merch as well too. You've designed clothing. You have your amazing T-shirt right there. Are we going to see more of that type of content, like when you're at either conventions, or are you going to do like Gary V's live online shopping? You're just going to have a 12-hour stream of you selling your own merch.
That's a great question. I think um, throw me off with that one. I would love to at least give it a shot, do the live social shopping. Um, at least, do a couple hours of it. I don't know that I want to dedicate 100 hours to it unless I'm actually seeing a return on investment because there's other avenues I want to pursue. I am trying to do bigger shows this year, like C2E2. I've applied for a couple shows out in Michigan and Wisconsin and different things that are longer events instead of just 1 day pop-up shows or like library shows to try to expand the reach that I can do. Um, but yeah, I don't really and then I've got other, Kickstarters planned to really try and kind of solidify my um, true crime authority, especially in this comic or entertaining light. Um, I've looked at doing as we talked about, a clothing brand called Syndicate Style. That was a Kickstarter I ran um, that was branching out and trying to go more serious. But I don't think I was able to get the reach that I needed because a lot of my core fans are comic fans or comic and crime fans and cartoony, as opposed to being the more serious, scholarly, academic 100% tone. And so um, altogether, it was it's data. I didn't invest, thousands of dollars into it. And so it's a nice marketing piece and data that I can take and, okay, this didn't quite work. How can I tweak this and still move forward?
Are you going to be like collecting your books into omnibuses or into like 3 issue collections or mini omnibuses or anything like that, whether it's with Dust Bunny Mafia or with any of your other works?
So the Based on a True Story series is actually becoming a trade. like um, like I briefly mentioned earlier. So that the book I've been laying out while the syndicate style Kickstarter has been running. I've been working on the next project, as most people do when they're promoting one and working on the next. Um, so hoping for a spring Kickstarter launch. So it's going to be called Family Business, an offer you cannot refuse. Um, which will be the next Dust Bunny Mafia trade, and it's going to collect the first 6 volumes of the Based on a True Story series, along with a bunch of other bonus material, bonus comics, guest art, and things like that. And so during that Kickstarter, the plan is to have the kind of the collection. So you can get you can do the catch-up collection, or get the individual book. So you can get the newest book, or you can get the 4 trades altogether. I don't know about doing a big omnibus like Calvin and Hobbes or something like that yet. Um, and I think this one I'd have to do like the first 3 books as one, and like have this be the start if I want to do more of a true crime, because it's um such a different format, even though it's the same physical format. This one's going to have like the little blurbs about the real crimes and history. So it would be weird to have all 4 of them together. But maybe someday. But I think right now I just kind of want to dig deeper into the Based on a True Story and that kind of angle, and building up the authority of the history, the real history that I do, even though I'm presenting funny comics.
Look, at least you categorize them into the proper genres that they are, so that kind of works out well, even though they are a cartoony style. The fact that you're including history is always wonderful to know, because 10 years down the road, who knows what's going to happen with the internet, and yours will be the only physical copies left. So there you go. Well, Brett, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you again for so much for being back on the show. It's been forever, and can't wait to have you back on. Maybe in the future, we'll talk about some other campaigns that might be coming up.
Yeah, I I always love being on the show, and our conversations and everything. So love to come back.
For those that want to support you, of course, with Dust Bunny Mafia and your other works here, where can they find you? How can they support you? And anything else you'd like to promote?
Yeah. So the easiest way is to go to my website, dustbunnymafia.com. There you can get links to my online store that's got all my graphic novels and some of my other fun collectibles. I ship everything myself, and so if you place an order from me, I will throw in some extra fun goodies from different campaigns and things like that. And then I've also got Kickstarter, is the other great way to support me. I run usually 3 to 4 campaigns in a year, and I offer exclusive merchandise and fun add-ons that generally won't be available outside of the campaigns.
Love it. That's great. Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talk. You can, of course, find Brett's interview and his other 5 interviews on our website. Well, actually, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. His podcast interviews, as well as 1,200 plus others, you can find wherever you get your podcast by searching twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening, watching on Two Geeks Talking.